Welcome to The Comfy Chairs, a podcast from 123 Limited. This is your host, Kate. A large part of the time we spend at work is occupied with talking about other people. This is especially true for leaders and HR professionals, whose work is focused on people first. And a lot of this talk happens when the subject of conversation isn't in the room. From the first interview until retirement and beyond, going to work means we talk about colleagues and, frankly, being talked about by others. Mr. Bennett, the benevolent yet disengaged father of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, observes this when he comments to his wife, "For what do we live but to make sport for our neighbors and laugh at them in our turn?" But in this universal truth, there's an uncomfortable tension. We may need to spend work time talking about people, but talking about people who aren't there is gossip. And gossip is bad, isn't it? Another tension that exists in leadership may help us navigate the challenges of workplace gossip. It's the gap that can exist between intent and impact. All of this is our topic today: workplace gossip as a tool, its impact, and leadership's role in using conversation and information to ensure healthy workplace cultures. So it's fitting that my guest today is the co-host of the podcast HR Confessions, where she shares wild stories from the world of the modern workplace. Rebecca, welcome to the Comfy Chairs. Thank you so much for joining me. As I've shared, I like to start here with allowing you to introduce yourself.
Yeah. And thank you, Kate, so much for having me. I've loved the concept of this podcast since we found each other like 6 months ago, I think.
It's been a while, yeah.
To be at recording now, I'm like very pumped. My name is Rebecca. I'm the co-founder and chief customer officer at SkillCycle, and we're a performance management and talent development platform. So essentially what we do is we make it really easy for people to get feedback, turn that feedback into a development plan, and then put that development plan into action, leveraging things like AI augmented workflows, as well as human coaching. We actually do believe in having human coaches as well. They're an incredibly important part of people's development. So yeah, it's a big part of what we do too.
You won't hear an argument from me on that topic, but bringing in the ability to have technology make things smoother and more at people's fingertips and connecting it quickly in ways that sometimes humans struggle with. It's such an exciting concept and great product.
Thank you.
And then I also like to point out that sponsored by SkillCycle, you host your own podcast, which is just a delight. It may be niche for HR people, but it also, if you like good stories and kind of reaction videos, if you will, it's a lot of fun. That's HR Confessions. And you co-host that with another former guest of the Comfy Chairs, Kim Rohr, who is a delight.
Yes, it's so fun. And when we started the podcast, we wanted to have sort of not just your typical HR podcast. And we wanted to have something where the content was more kind of evergreen. So not just of the time, but something that is sort of always there and around us. And so we came up with the concept for HR Confessions. It's actually kind of loosely based on the format of Normal Gossip, if you're familiar with that.
Which is a delightful podcast, speaking of.
It's my guilty pleasure. I love it so much. And it's kind of funny because what we have is we have people submit stories to us, well, mostly to me. So they'll send us voice notes, DMs, conversations where they tell us these crazy things that happened to them at their company, either as in HR, or if they're just people that experienced weird things at a company. And I turn them into you're in the room where it happens type of narratives and read them for Kim. And now we're actually welcoming guest co-hosts to come into and react and have conversations with us. So
wonderful.
It is really fun. HR is a wild ride.
Yes, it's a very fun podcast. There will be a link to it. Thank you for reminding me of Normal Gossip. The former host of that has just published a book this year called You Didn't Hear This From Me, that looks at essentially like the rich history, the sociology, and the psychology of gossip and sharing stories. It's a fascinating read. It's just an interesting topic. If you are a storyteller or enjoy stories, if gossip is your guilty pleasure, if gossip is something you think is highly problematic, um, it's a I think it's a good resource for people. So I'll also provide a link to that book too. But I'd like to go ahead and dive into our conversation and
Yeah,
start with the basics, or really
let's
just
do
kind
it.
of the foundational things. Technically, what is gossip? And is it bad or good? Do we know?
Yeah. I think it's like, it's funny because a lot of my takes on gossip are actually, they've been shaped over the years of just growing up in a
Hmm.
community. I grew up in Queens, New York, which
Okay.
it's the big city, but it's one big small town.
Yeah.
Everyone knows your business, everyone knows everything.
Hmm.
And so I kind of grew up surrounded by it. But a lot of my sort of takes on gossip now are actually formed from the show Normal Gossip and from Kelsey McKinney's
Hmm.
book, which kind of inspired all of this. So when I loosely think of gossip, the definition is basically talking about someone, at least two people talking about someone else who's not in the room.
Yes.
And so it can be whether that information is true, untrue, the validity of the story being told is kind of not the thing that I worry about as much when I'm defining gossip. It's more just you're talking about someone who's not there.
Yeah. I think having that very technical definition is important, and recognizing that in our parlance, gossip has been coded with negativity, where
Hmm.
there are, if we are technically saying that gossip is discussing people who are not present, even talking about your co-host Kim, somebody whom we both know, she's not with us in the moment. That could
Yeah, we're
technically
gossiping
be
about her.
gossip, but
Yeah.
it is all how much we delight in her. So
Hmm.
I think it's important, as in many things, particularly in leadership in the workplace, to strip away the emotion that we've given to a word or a concept and get really clear on what it really is, because that's going
Yeah.
to help us decide, is it morally neutral and I need to be clear that my intent and my impact align, or is this really problematic and I need to manage it more closely? So there are lots of ways of talking about each other. Gossip is obviously one. Rumors can
Hmm.
be another way, which is probably a category of gossip or a synonym.
Yeah.
And HR consultations are talking about
Yeah.
people. When you and I first
Recruiting.
met, recruiting, talent
Yeah.
planning, succession planning. What distinguishes these types of talking about, and what purpose do they serve, do you think, in the workplace?
Yeah. So to me, it's about, I had sort of this moment where I realized that so much of work is gossip.
Mm-hmm.
And it translates into so many different kinds of ways. So when I think about what distinguishes it, workplace gossip is there is always going to be the water cooler rumor mill, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's always going to be there. But there are parts of workplace gossip that really kind of then turn into sometimes whistleblower conversations.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like it starts with a rumor of, hey, did you know that this thing is happening here? And then the more you hear the same thing over and over, the more you kind of say, well, maybe where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And when I look at something like rumor mill gossip that turned into real world things, I think of like the Me Too movement. I think
Mm-hmm.
about, sort of that stuff that all started and was run on gossip for a while
Right.
until it was proven to be true. Um, and then it sort of unfurled and everything from there. And that's a big, very public version of what workplace gossip can be. But when I think about how we encounter it more day to day, it's in things like interviews.
Yep.
So, my background's in HR. I got my start in HR. I started in learning and development, and then I quickly kind of moved into recruiting. And recruiting is so much gossip
So
because
much.
yeah, you're talking about your ideal candidate, right? You say, oh, we want to hire this person for this role. Well, what's your ideal profile? I don't know, someone just like so and so.
Mm-hmm.
There's always, whenever you're dealing with a hiring manager, they're always comparing a new hire to someone else who already works there, even if it's just, you know, attitude wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's like different skill set, but this is what they're like. So there's always just referencing someone, and kind of using other people as context to understand other people that you're trying to hire
Mhm.
from a recruiting perspective.
Well, even if I'm not saying uh, this person is just like Rebecca, that's why I want to hire them. I'm talking about the candidate pool and trying to decide. And the best interviewing structures don't happen in a vacuum. So the
Hmm.
recruiter and the hiring manager and the appropriate people are having conversations about candidates,
Yeah.
which is technically a form of gossip.
Yeah, you do
Yeah.
an interview calibration. You're
Mm-hmm.
like, we've all met with this person now. Let's get together in a room and
Mm-hmm.
talk through those conversations, what we liked, what we didn't like, and what we want to do about with
Yeah.
this candidate. Do we want to move them ahead? Do we want to hire them? Do we want to remove them from the process? What do we want to do?
Yeah. Well,
That's where
reference
it starts to get
checks.
interesting.
Reference
Yeah,
checks.
reference checks.
And
Yep,
I
they're
think
gossip.
it's a wonderful example of kind of where things can be done well or we can misuse those opportunities. There's a lot right now about kind of back channel references. Oh, I
Hmm.
happen to know this person's former boss or somebody that worked with them. They're not
Hmm.
an official, sanctioned reference, but I'm going to go talk to the people I know.
Hmm.
And or the you have to give us 50 references.
Yeah.
That is a misuse of getting that information and having those conversations. I believe
Yeah.
that talking to somebody that used to work with me 20 years ago that I haven't encountered in a long time without my permission or knowledge is problematic if it's going to
Yeah.
determine a hiring decision.
Yeah. What it does is I could probably have a whole 30 minutes just ranting about backdoor references.
Yes.
And honestly, reference checks in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just if it's a sanctioned reference check, so it's here are my references, call them. There's no way someone's going to give a reference for someone who's going to say
Yeah.
anything negative about them
They were
or,
a real
whatever
problem
it
and I
is, right?
didn't like working with them. You should never hire them.
Right.
You're not going to get
Right.
that from a list of
Exactly.
references.
Exactly. And a lot of times, companies don't allow reference checks. So if
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they say you can't talk to recruiters about former employees. In HR, there's usually sort of a parameter where you could just say their start date, their end date.
Mm-hmm.
So you can validate their dates of employment, which is valid. That could be fine, right? Um, but backdoor references are really ones that I just find them so lazy. And I always had this issue where it's like, can you not make a decision on your own? How come you
Mm.
need these other people on the internet who you may or may not know? How come you're trusting their opinion more than your own? Do you not trust all of the questions that you've asked, your ability to assess this person? Because what you're doing is you're introducing bias into even more bias than there already is into the process.
I love that you brought up the topic of bias. Yesterday, I recorded another episode that's going to be about bias and vulnerability. Talking
Mm,
about bias is critical when we talk about decision making.
yes.
And in the context we're discussing, gossip is information that's being collected to determine important decisions.
Hmm.
So paying attention to am I doing like back channel stuff, but am I always going to the same people for the down low, or
Hmm.
do I disregard things that come from one person but I think these people are valid? That if you are using the information that you receive through a rumor mill, for example, to make decisions, it is a highly problematic biased process
Hmm.
just by its very nature. So there's so much discernment that has to go into talking about how we navigate this. Like
Yeah.
that is the skill that I think people need to use. Discernment, emotional intelligence, you name it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also the just even the concept of confirmation bias.
Mm-hmm.
Most people, when they're doing reference checks or backdoor references, they're looking for you to confirm a conclusion that they've already drawn,
Yep.
right, wrong, or indifferent. So they might be like, this person seems extremely qualified, but there's just something about them that I don't like. I want to find out what that is.
Yes.
So the other thing with backdoor references is it's the mindset and the frame that you line up your questions. So it's just like, it's usually something like, what's the catch with this person?
Mm.
Or is this person really as good as they think that they are or as good as they've come out to be? So it's kind of why, it's kind of what we think and talk about a lot at SkillCycle is like, how do we almost like embrace the fact that it's going to happen, or just embrace the fact that this is how people operate, because
Hmm.
this is primal, natural kind of stuff, and then find the opportunity to help guide them to use any of these gossip points as data points, not as decision makers, right? Data
Exactly.
points that can be validated against actual data, like qualitative data. Um, and the ultimate sort of the ultimate sign of it working is when your succession planning, your future leadership bench doesn't look the same as it always has.
Yes.
So you're not just looking at this person has potential because they talk like me, they think like me, they look like me. It's this person has potential because they embody these certain qualities, they've built these specific skills. There are other things that we've done.
Hmm.
And that's where, it's like you just have to, most people aren't intentionally evil. They just
Most.
they just don't have better ways to make decisions, or they just don't
No.
have a better way to do it. And so it's like my co-founder and I both come from HR, and we look at it as like it's kind of we're taking on the responsibility of giving people a better way,
Hmm.
at least to, at least marginally better than just writing diary entries about our employees and determining whether or not they're fit for management down the road.
Yes. The talent development space is a place where I think the activity of talking about other people when they're not present is so vital. It's a necessary tool, but it often gets wielded in unfortunate and sometimes even unethical ways.
Hmm.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
that's, I think I shared with you, my focus area is in talent and succession planning, that I spent years running talent review sessions. Um, and when I was younger, I had certain opinions, and the older I got and more experienced I got, I had very different opinions about how were we using that information and what were the guardrails we put around how we talked about people,
Hmm.
which it's a herding cats proposition when you're doing that
Yeah.
with C-suite folks. But I think it goes to this question of what is in and out of bounds when we're talking about people at work. Is anything?
Yeah.
And if so, what?
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to out of bounds or inbounds, it's not, in my mind, it's not just about the topic, or it's not just
Hmm.
about the context. It's about who's saying it.
Yeah.
So it's power dynamics. Power dynamics are the biggest influence in any type of gossip story. Because even if we take it outside the workplace, we're just looking at personal gossip, right? It's like,
Hmm.
who's the person who told this to you? Are they credible? Do we believe them? Who are they to the person that we're talking about? But power dynamics are such an important dynamic within the workforce. So if you're a manager, you're a leader, who you say, or what you say about whom to whom.
Hmm.
I think my English degree is like twisting itself right now, but
I'm
what
following.
you say,
Fellow
yeah, what you
English
say to
major, I'm
certain
following.
people. But that is what makes a big difference, right? So it's one thing if I'm a director and I go to a
Hmm.
fellow director and we talk about another director. But if I go to a director and I'm gossiping about my employee, I'm now gossiping about someone who has less power than the two of us do. And even if in that moment it seems completely innocuous, it could be, hey, did you hear that, so and so was out drinking all night last night, and like they're now coming in and giving their biggest presentation to date. Like, if you're saying that, and there's this other person who has sort of some kind of decision making power within the company, you're now you're now possibly tainting that person's reputation within the company, even if at the end of the day it turns out to go completely fine. But then when it comes to having conversations about promotions or succession planning,
Yeah.
that other director now has something they can hold over that person that can possibly hold them back from getting promoted. They could be like, didn't they show up absolutely hungover on like the biggest presentation day of their career? Instead of promoting them, why don't we promote someone on my team? It's like having like really paying attention to power dynamics, even when it's talking about things that are true, is
Hmm.
really important. And I'm, I'm always the I'm always the type to say that your circle, your professional circle within your organization, like within your company, gets smaller the higher up you get.
Yes.
So, C-suite within C-suite, C-suite to C-suite gossip among C-suite, that's one thing, right? But as soon as you're starting to, say possibly untrue things about the people below you, that's when it starts to get really complicated. You don't want to feed the rumor mill. But it also goes the other way, where if you are thinking about it as I'm at a certain rank and I'm talking about someone below me, whether they
Hmm.
report to me or not, you could be saying it in a good way intentionally, right? Like you could say, this person is, you know, always doing such great work. They're always the first one in, the last one out, whatever it is. You could be saying things in a positive sense, but you could be skewing information because what if that's not necessarily a measure of whether or not someone's doing their job well. But you're
Exactly.
now feeding information that's giving that person an unfair advantage over someone who doesn't have the same habits but might have the same output. So that's the thing where it's like when you look at talent management, succession planning, and measuring potential, it's rarely about what someone actually does, and it's about whether or not they follow those unsaid rules or
Hmm.
those unsaid standards.
Exactly.
Um, that's where it can become a big problem too.
Well, and we're also talking about the topic, the consideration of reputation too
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
this, that both yours and mine, as well as the other person's.
Yeah.
So, are you somebody that participates in rumor spreading, which I think is a little different than just plain gossip, if you will? It's
Yeah.
something where I'm saying, "Have you heard?" People are saying, if it's unfounded and I have no personal firsthand knowledge of it, that's concerning because that is a rumor, and then it impacts your ability to trust me. So my
Mm-hmm.
reputation, I'm possibly tainting you, uh,
Yeah.
and creating this problem. And then there's the reputation of the person about whom we're speaking, and that's regardless of the standard power dynamic. If you're gossiping up the chain, it could have implications for someone's career and leadership. I worked with
Yeah.
someone for a number of years who loved office gossip to the point that I think she must have been having a slow day. She came up to me and she was like, let's just make up rumors about people. What's gossip we
Oh
can
my
make up?
God.
I'm like, no. No, I was
Yeah.
horrified. I mean, there's part of me that's like, I want to know what you're going to come up with, because
Right. There's the
that's,
curiosity.
yeah, I'm morbidly fascinated in this moment. But that mindset of I want to create gossip, whether it's for drama or for other reasons. And
Yeah.
frankly, the rumor that she presented as her contribution, when I was like, I'm not doing this, it's like, oh no, I already have one. It's something that could have been career ending for the people
Yeah.
involved. I'm like, that's not something we want to be talking about.
Yeah. Especially if it's not true.
Yes.
Especially if it's just completely made up. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're talking mostly because of our backgrounds and I think our preferences about things like succession and talent and leadership. I think there are also ways that workplace gossip can serve as a tool for the broader picture. You discussed
Mm-hmm.
kind of qualitative data before,
Mm-hmm.
that the things that your employees are talking about or that you're hearing whispers of, that's data for you to understand what's happening in their experience.
Mm-hmm.
And as a leader, it's not that you necessarily want to encourage rumors and gossip, but you have an opportunity to mine those conversations for patterns.
Yes. Yeah. That's the key. That is honestly the key because people are going to be talking no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, we are human beings. It's also a big driver of community. Like, that's a big part of Kelsey's book, actually, is how
Yes.
gossip brings communities together. And that it's always going to be there. The important thing is how you use it and how you discern its truth, and how you also, like you said, find patterns, but then also determine action when action needs to be taken,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like, you know, pretending that gossip doesn't happen means that you could also be just missing out on a huge lever of information about
Yes.
what the employee experiences, um, or even just ideas. Because when you think about it, a lot of really good ideas and innovation come out of just brainstorming, unstructured conversations. Um, so it's really, I think, a key skill of really good leaders is understanding how to harness gossip
Mm-hmm.
and turn it into actual discussion. Recognizing that, not every single piece of gossip needs to have its day in the sun, right?
Yes.
But if you're finding that, people are saying the same things over and over again about either this specific person or if it's just about their experience working in a company, it's like know what to listen for and know how to identify when you're hearing the same things a few times. So you can then sort of digest that and see, okay, does this need further probing? Does this need to be investigated? Could this be used to our advantage? Maybe it's a good thing, right? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
employees are like, hey, we are craving more connection together, and we've been talking about these ideas for more community opportunities or more volunteer things that we could do. If you're hearing stuff like that, then especially if you're in HR, it's like, oh, how can we turn this from gossiping to brainstorming to actually implementing something?
Mm-hmm.
Because, it really becomes dangerous though when you're using gossip to make decisions more than any other data point.
Yes.
So if you see that someone's performing consistently, you see that they're getting good feedback, in their performance evaluations from if you do peer evaluations or even if it's just how you've observed their behavior, like using gossip as the thing that decides whether or not that person is warranted a promotion or a raise is where you're using it the wrong way as a leader and as a manager.
Agreed.
And so tools that make it easier to kind of determine, the what actually gives someone potential are they're going to lead to more dynamic leadership benches for your company, meaning,
Mm-hmm.
and dynamic meaning you're going to see people from different perspectives, not just the yes people. Because a lot of times, I don't know, you've done a lot of succession planning too.
Yeah.
In these sessions, it's always the people who are queued up next are always the yes people.
Yes,
They're
they
always
are.
the people who are like,
You
so
don't see a lot of disruption going up that particular ladder.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. And so it devalues the people that are just like, I don't know if that's a direction of the company. And, the knowing how to harness the dissenters, because you hear them, usually the dissenters start by they'll leave a meeting and they'll be like, can you believe that? That was so annoying. Like
Yeah.
that's worth listening to because that person cares enough to have a dissenting opinion. They
Right.
care enough to connect different dots.
Yeah.
So that's where I could really nerd out about this is like how can you find the dissenters and not try to go after them as like you're not doing what we want the company to do, but understand how to have those conversations with them to be like, why do you think that that's the wrong direction? It might be that it doesn't change the direction, but at least you can understand their perspective and maybe explain the decision from a viewpoint that makes more sense to them.
Exactly. There is this larger cultural knowledge management concern or need that we're talking about here, that gossip is stories, and stories always have the potential to drive engagement and change. So the stories that are being told about decisions, about people, about events, as a leader, a senior leader particularly, do you have awareness of them, and are you harnessing them to make better? Whether it's better decisions, a better experience, a better culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where that opportunity is, and that you're not using them, as you've pointed out, necessarily in the space of people decisions, like individual people decisions should not come on those stories. But if we're not paying attention to the gossip, you can let problems persist, quality can be impacted, you can lose knowledge as a result. The gossip about the person that recently retired who was the in-house expert. Those stories let you know this is how we've done this successfully for years, for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So not squashing gossip, but understanding that it is a data mine for you and a way to impact performance and culture over time by pulling the knowledge that's gained from those stories for long-term use, essentially.
Yeah. And teaching and guiding employees on how do I say this? How to use gossip more strategically in their own role too.
Yes.
So, especially, more junior employees who are still learning corporate dynamics, they're still learning, power, they're still learning all of that stuff just because they're newer to the workforce.
Hmm.
And they haven't, maybe before someone's a manager, they're not responsible for other people yet. So they don't yet grasp the weight of their words. Um, and so I do think that there's a lot of use in just teaching people, making it part of the curriculum about workplace gossip. And you can call it whatever you want. You can call it, you know, off the cuff conversations, water cooler talk. You can call it whatever you want. But I do think that there's a lot of value in just teaching employees and guiding them throughout the course of their whole experience, but especially when they're on the junior side, to really understand the weight of their words
Hmm.
so they can also be really intentional with how they then participate in workplace gossip. So, you might want to be the person who can't keep a secret. You might want to be the person who's like always like bringing everyone's dirty laundry to the
Yeah.
conference room. Um, or you might want to be the person who realizes, like, hey, if I, hear something or if I have a thought about something, I know that there's a place that I could take it. I know that I could talk to my manager about it. And if they hear the same thing from enough people, or maybe if they hear what I have to say and then they ask other people in my position if they hear and think the same thing, I can drive change that way.
Hmm.
Like, most change doesn't happen because there's a grenade thrown and everything, then has to change at once.
Yes.
Most meaningful change happens tiny conversations at a time that build up a lot of momentum.
Hmm.
So when you're a junior employee, learning and understanding the power and the weight of your words, your perspective, your feelings, and your thoughts, knowing how to harness that in a productive way, not so that every single emotion that you have is going to, be something that's going to change something. I just think that's a really powerful balance for people to learn early
Hmm.
on.
Well, you've done such a good job distinguishing between what can be unproductive and what is important and necessary. I'm not coming into the conference room and airing somebody else's dirty laundry. I am taking information forward that is relevant, that is applicable, that matters to the work that we
Hmm.
do in order to impact things. Because I think I can safely say that's the type of gossip that we want to see happening in the workplace. I
Yes.
don't need to know, by and large, I don't want to participate in hearing about who may or may not be having an affair.
Yeah.
That is not what I want. But what there are cases we could have the whole HR
Unless, yeah.
discussion about that.
I was gonna say
But
sometimes you do.
yes,
Yeah.
but in this case, I'm having a Coldplay Kiss Cam flashback moment.
Yeah.
But in this case, we're talking about what are people saying that we can use for, again, I'm repeating myself, we can use for the betterment of the organization.
Yeah.
Even if it's we need to stop doing something because it's no longer effective or working for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also just understanding how to process those conversations. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no one more passionate about your company than someone who's new, whether they're new to the workforce
It's
or
true.
they're new to their role because they're coming in, they're fresh. They're like, this is my new start. I fought for this job. I negotiated for this job. Here I am. So they're going to be the people that, yes, they're going to have a lot that they're still trying to learn. They're still building their foundation of knowledge, whether they're brand new to
Mm-hmm.
working or if they're brand new to the org. Like, no one comes in knowing everything,
Yes.
which is why backdoor references are stupid, because it's like they might have worked at that last company, but that doesn't mean they're going to work here. I'll take any moment to work that in because
I love it. I am here for it, Rebecca.
but like, you're never going to meet someone at that time where they have like more enthusiasm, and you almost have to just embrace how little they know in that moment
Yes.
and let them help them sort of channel their feelings, their initial thoughts as they're learning something. Like, what about this process is really interesting to you? What about this process feels really stupid to you? What about our message is something that is really resonating with you?
Mm-hmm.
And giving people space, because if you have an emotional reaction to it or some sort of connection to it, that means something about it is either really working or really not working. And this is a person who isn't yet maybe indoctrinated into the way things have always been. It's someone who's not afraid of changing something because of the work that it'll take to do it. So it's helpful to kind of make sure, especially if you have new people in your organization, to have a lot of these conversations in their first, I say 180 days.
I
I
love
say in
it.
their first like 6 months, like just really, kind of say, not to sound like a, I don't know, not to sound like a TikTok like thing, but it's like, what's the vibe? What's the vibe of this team?
It
What's the vibe
is.
of this process?
Well, it's also that's an opportunity to find out who's helping you. How can we
Yeah.
recognize people for how they're making the experience of our newest employees easier, better, more streamlined? I think that if we can think about gossip as the stories that help us understand the way people are experiencing the workplace, whether that's relational dynamics, broken processes, opportunities for recognition, it puts a lens on it where it becomes powerful. Not just in
Hmm.
the fact that words matter and words carry weight and power to them, but it's tapping into skills like influence, organizational savvy, political savvy, agility within a
Hmm.
company that you mentioned before, teaching people. I think we can hook into already common and recognized competencies like influence through relationships
Hmm.
to say it's not just about I can be nice, it's I recognize that the way I speak, what I share, the content of my conversations over time is part of how I create my reputation and the space that I take up at this company.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect way to put it is like how here's how I articulate the space that I take up at this company. And every instance of experiencing someone's story is an opportunity to give feedback, whether it's you absorb it as feedback for yourself
Mm-hmm.
as this person's manager, or if it's feedback that you can give back to this person to sort of say, hey, I understand you feel a kind of way about this. This is why this is like this, or, here's how we can channel this better. There's always, I think that everything is sort of a learning moment or could
Mm-hmm.
be a learning moment, but I'm nerdy like that.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree. And I'm glad you brought up feedback because I think that's one of the topics that's really important to face in this
Hmm.
conversation is when I hear gossip about someone that I believe they need to understand, know more about, that it impacts, say, their reputation or it reflects on their performance, how to do that in a way where it's not obtrusive, offensive, based on
Hmm.
rumor.
Hmm.
What are the opportunities? Not just for, frankly, not just for people in management roles, but for peers too.
Yeah.
If I'm hearing something about you that doesn't put you in a great light, do I owe you a conversation about that? And if so, and there's a lot of it depends, I will acknowledge that. If I determine that I need to tell you about it, how do I do that in a way that's effective, compassionate, and consumable?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is kind of where it can get super interesting, right? Because there's the, you said, how do I tell you about it? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm also just like, how do you identify it? Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, we're going to first react to a feeling we have, or, maybe I'll leave a meeting with someone and I'm just like, maybe it's someone I normally work really well with, and I leave and I'm just like, they really pissed me off. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it almost, it almost makes you have to kind of think about like, okay, let me identify, is this a feedback point for me? Is it a feedback point for them? Did they piss me off because they didn't tell me what I want to hear and they always do? And now they're giving me a differing opinion. Maybe I need to think about that as a leader, as a manager, as a peer. It's like, just because someone disagrees with me, that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to, it doesn't mean they're doing anything wrong. It might mean that I have to navigate that situation better. I have to
Mm-hmm.
build my EQ better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's, well, not I think that, I know that a lot of people are afraid of giving feedback.
Oh, yes.
Um, partially because it's hard, partially because it's like a lot of us haven't learned how to do it.
Uh-huh.
We're just kind of, left to our own devices and hope for the best. But there is also this fear of getting canceled. There's this fear of like, who's recording this conversation? I know this
Mm-hmm.
conversation is being recorded for the record,
Good,
but
good. That is the whole purpose of our conversation.
but you know, there's like, how do I know? How do I trust that this isn't gonna somehow
Mm-hmm.
come back and bite me? And we avoid doing the feedback because of all the other stuff around it that doesn't actually have to do with the feedback itself. It becomes
Yeah.
more about reputation management, image, all of this. And so, you know, a lot of what we think about, we talk about, and we sort of guide is be really intentional with tying feedback to action.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if you're going to tell someone that you felt a certain kind of way about that meeting that you were just in, you better have a specific example to back up how you
Yes.
feel. Because
Yes.
if you don't, it could just be that you didn't like it. And
Yeah.
that's okay too. It's okay to process it. But it's like if you can't tie that to some sort of specific thing that they did, then it might mean that there's something there that isn't there. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, it's why having better, you know, having a better way to unearth what actually is feedback and what's an opinion
Yes.
is like kind of where it sits for me.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I feel like this is an elementary school model that I'm going to absolutely butcher. It's the whole decision tree of, is it true? Is it helpful?
Mm-hmm.
Is it kind?
Yeah.
And if I say no to any of those, maybe it doesn't come out of my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it does, and I recognize that I have said something not true, something not helpful, something unkind, well, then what's the work I need to do to make amends, to retract, to redact, whatever that is? And I think those are guidelines that can serve us kind of across the board, obviously with self-talk, with the way we talk to people in the moment, but also if we're choosing to tell stories about people or events, that filter of, is it true?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Should I be talking about it then? What does that mean for
Yeah.
my reputation? What impact will it have? Is it helpful? No. Then why am I taking time on it?
Yeah.
If I'm not clear, let me be clear about the fact that I don't know if this helps or not.
Yeah.
And then, is it kind? I think if we asked ourselves that simple question more in life in general, not even about the stories we tell or the gossip that we share, I just think we would be better off in the world as a whole.
In the world as a whole, yes.
Yeah.
I do think I disagree though
Okay.
about keeping it kind. And I'm not saying let's all go and brutalize each other, right?
Well,
Um, but I do find that when you could have feedback for someone that might be hard to hear. And
okay.
in the moment, it might feel unkind to deliver it to them. I've seen a lot of situations where people will avoid giving feedback because with that as a clutch.
This is the perspective that I frankly like to counter with.
Mm-hmm.
That difficult feedback is an act of compassion. It is kind and this very much, it can make light of it, but I think it's like if your dress is caught up in your pantyhose and everyone can see your Tuesday underwear, it's not kind of me not to tell you. It may be embarrassing for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a little socially awkward, but it's unkind if I don't give you that feedback. And I think difficult feedback, it's how you deliver it is the act of kindness. And if you're doing it not because I want to hurt you, because I want you to feel bad that you totally goofed up in that meeting, but because I care more about you, your reputation, your performance than I do my own comfort.
Yeah.
That's the kindness there. Because I agree with you. A lot of people are like, well, it's just not nice. Well, it's also not nice to not tell someone that they've got broccoli in their teeth.
Yeah. I think philosophically we're aligned.
Hmm.
Semantically is where I get caught up, which is again my English degree. It's just
Oh, that's fine.
here it is.
That's fine.
Because I do agree. It is the concept of like, I think our sort of tree that we've sort of guided is it true? Is it productive? And is it clear?
Okay.
So is it
Clears.
true? Does it matter? Clear clarity is kindness.
Yep. Yep. Clear as
That's why I'm
kind.
like, I think it's just a vocab thing, but
Yeah.
philosophically, we're completely
Well,
aligned.
and I can be clear and harsh,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So again, well, I have this whole philosophy that leadership is an act of love. So,
Mm.
which I know some HR people that raises all their hackles and spidey sense. But I think it comes down to that. I care for you and I want the best for you. And
Yeah.
sometimes that means I do difficult things. And I think in the space of talking about what gossip can do for us and versus the harm that it can cause, if we choose not to step into those difficult moments of either, hey, Kate, maybe this isn't a story you should be sharing
Yeah.
because it reflects poorly on you or you don't know if it's true. Well, that's an act of care for me to confront that. Or if it's,
Yeah.
hey, Rebecca, this isn't comfortable. I don't know if you've heard about this, but I've heard a couple of people mention a mistake that you made in public.
Hmm.
Um, I don't want to tell you I'm gossiping about you, but I want you to be aware of what's been said.
Yeah.
And there are different ways to go about doing that. But you're
Yeah.
right. In those moments of feedback, we have amygdala responses. We don't want to create a sense of threat because then we feel threatened. We are driven more
Yep.
by fear than we are by, our better selves or our prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is probably a whole topic that we could go down to. I don't know if you're aware, but your co-host and I are co-authoring a feedback guide right now.
Oh, I know.
So,
Yeah.
good. Hooray. Yeah, so it's that is another topic, and I think
Yeah.
feedback and gossip are kind of they're next door neighbors in a lot of ways.
They are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when it's feedback about someone who's not in the room,
Yes.
which happens sometimes just naturally, right? So again, we talked about interviews and obviously you're
Mm-hmm.
going to be debriefing about a candidate. They're not going to be in the room in that moment. But sometimes there's also, I don't know how many times I've had this situation at work where it's just like I've had an employee come up to me and say, I'm like, I need to tell this person that I'm having a hard time working with them, or I
Mm-hmm.
have you're like, I need to tell so and so that I thought that their presentation was more confusing and it just led to more questions than answers.
Mm-hmm.
How do I go about that conversation? So we in HR kind of have like this blessing slash maybe curse of sort of being the feedback orchestrators of
Exactly.
a lot within a company.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's kind of just helping people to remove their own ego from the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean ego in like a big headed way. I just mean in a true self-preservation way, because most of the times that people are hesitant to give feedback, unless it's just great job on everything, you're the best, is because they're worried about ruining their relationship with that person.
Mm-hmm.
But that person very rarely actually receives it that way. So, yes, there's always going to be people that are like, I can't believe you don't think I walk on water. Like that's just humans. They're always going to exist. But most of the times the hesitation to give clear, direct, kind feedback, constructive feedback is because of the person. It's more about the person trying to give it than it is about the person receiving it. And so what we try to do a lot from a coaching perspective and just from a reframe perspective is give this feedback or frame this feedback as if it's not you giving it to them, as if
Mm-hmm.
it's not just have like an out of body experience about it and then reinsert yourself back
Mm-hmm.
into the conversation because sometimes it just helps because then if you remove your own ego from the conversation, you're less afraid. You're less
Mm-hmm.
worried that this person's going to think that you hate them, right?
Yeah. I actually love that coaching because I think it's in some ways it's a very easy handle to grasp. I talk about no interpretation, pay attention, like if you're using a lot of adjectives or adverbs or always, never, chances are you're interpreting what's happening. And
Yes.
this is that just a little bit older than you, so I think of my Nick at Night reruns of Dragnet, like Joe
Yep.
Friday.
Oh, I watch those.
Oh, good. Joe Friday, just the
Yep.
facts, ma'am. That's what your feedback should start with, that you need to
Yeah.
connect it to what is the business impact. Why am I telling you this in this context? But, let me take my ego out of it. Let me report on kind of that third person arm's length, not non-emotional, that's not quite the right way, but essentially I take my heart out of it so that I can be objective with and for you, and then we can step into it together, insert myself back into the scene. Love that language too, Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It helps because it's just sometimes it's like it really can have the opposite effect too, where you realize like if I take myself out of it, maybe there really isn't feedback to give.
Right.
Maybe there's just I didn't like it and I just have to deal with that. Because
Yeah.
that's also a thing.
Yeah, and it's what you said before too. Sometimes it's okay that you don't like it, and maybe if it's a pattern, those are the things that you can address, but you don't make it a I feel bad, so you need to change conversation.
Yes, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's where I think managers have such an opportunity too for the way that they manage their employees to help them keep things within context and within sort of, the bigger picture of their role. Because I'm a firm believer that when we started to introduce the concept of having a player coach, so a manager who also does individual contributor work, we broke the model. And I don't mean that in a good way, because now managers are doing all this individual contributor work and managing their actual people is like a side hustle. And we know that the amount of work that takes is, it takes a lot more emotional presence and a lot more context and trust building that doesn't happen when you're also doing 1,000 other things.
Yeah.
But I'll put that conversation over here in the corner for now. But
next year.
What has happened? Yeah, next year could be like a whole thing. But when you are managing an employee, especially again, I think that I skew a lot towards managers who are managing individual contributors, because we coach a lot of them. So we get their sort of, because they're the prime community for folks that need help. So a lot of, what we see, what we hear is about having to explain their direct report's job to them, not in a task way, but in a here's why your role matters. Here's how this lines up to, the bigger goal, or at least the departmental goal, right? So if you're a sales manager that manages 10 salespeople and you're, on each person to make sure they hit their quota, that's going to either be a really highly individualized team where everybody's running towards their own quota and don't care, or you can frame those conversations as this is our team goal. This is what you contribute to that goal. If you're having a hard time working with a peer because they're involved on this with you, the team goal is the context from which your feedback starts.
Yes.
So it's like keeping conversations in like, what is it all for? It might mean that most days are going to be tough. It might mean that most days, you're going to be dealing with more things you don't like than things that you do like. It's why we get paid. It's why it's work. It's a job. It's just part of it.
Work is work.
Work is work. But if you can keep like the bigger picture part in mind and just where on the team this is coming from, you find that you're actually able to give and to get more productive feedback because it has context. Feedback without context is gossip and an opinion. But
I love
if
it.
It has context, it's a thing.
that is such a beautiful way to kind of bring those two topics together, and put a little bow on it. That what we would both want is to see that we're not in the workplace, we're not suppressing gossip, that we recognize that productive gossip needs to have certain characteristics and circumstances surrounding it. And that everyone plays a role in ensuring that those exist.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I love that. Feedback without context is gossip. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
It's the tagline now.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
We should co-opt that somehow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am paying attention to the time and we're right at the top of the hour. And I know that you've got many things going on. So I just like to end, are there any kind of takeaways or either from the conversation or something that you'd want to share about work that you have going on right now.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I appreciate you having me here too. I know that I could go for so much longer because I love these topics and I love these things. Um, I think that the key is like from a major takeaway, if you're listening to this, it's really kind of think about your role in harnessing gossip within your organization and turning it into something productive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and not pretending that it doesn't exist and not avoiding it, because it can be really easy to just kind of bury our heads in the sand and
Mm-hmm.
kind of be like, this isn't a thing that I don't, this isn't a thing that I need to worry about. But if people don't have a way to understand how to use gossip or how to use these different things that they might be hearing and understanding, then they're gonna go rogue. Um, so frameworks, just acknowledging the reality of just like being human is really important. I'll also say that there's been a rise in gossip within organizations because of people working remotely,
Mm-hmm.
where we almost have these weird, like almost like parasocial relationships with each other because we might not know each
Yes.
other in real life, quote unquote real life. And so what it's done is there's all kinds of engagement survey articles, data that you can read from 1,000 different things, but it has led to this like lack of engagement because people feel disconnected. So if you can understand how to harness gossip as a community asset in a productive way, then that's kind of a good place to start to kind of think about how to unify your culture. Gossip really kind of can be the connective tissue that
Mm-hmm.
brings your people together when it's harnessed and used the right way. And it's that part that it's hard because it's going to be different for every company. There's not one way to do it. But again, it all kind of starts with just giving people really good context for what they can be reacting to, how they can be reacting to it. And just know and understand that people have a lot of feelings and they're used to expressing those feelings freely. And so it is kind of on this like generation of leadership in HR to know how to use that productively so
Mm-hmm.
that we can continue to grow functional organizations and develop future or people and future leaders for every
Exactly.
company.
Gossip can become the source of data for your employee
Mm-hmm.
experience. It becomes your corporate stories that connect people. It has the potential to. And it has a part to play in how we engage with, provide feedback, and have the relationships that create better results.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Very well said.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Rebecca, thank you again. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today. If this conversation sparked something useful, please follow the Comfy Chairs and leave a review. Those small actions help more people find the show. Got a leadership question you'd like featured in a future Comfy HQ episode? Please send it my way. I'd love to hear what's on your mind. And when you're ready to move from ideas into action, 123 Limited helps leaders build stronger teams, sharper strategies, and better talent plans. Learn more at 123limited.com. That's ONE23LTD.com. Thanks for listening.